So here in Paul's letter to the Corinthians, he's essentially saying life's not fair, but Christians don't expect it to be, and we make do anyways. It's the long and the short of everything that Paul was saying. We cause no one to stumble in anything, in order that no fault may be found with our ministry. Okay, so regardless of what other people do, we're going to do the right thing. Right? Fair? Good. Okay. So, we have abortion clinics in this country. Do we abort children? No, we don't. Okay. We have anthropological confusion in policies in our school. Do we go along with that? No, we don't. Right? We have horrific blasphemous demonstrations in our nation. We don't take part. I hope you guys didn't even watch anything of it. I hope you just ignored it because it was evil and you didn't want to even have the things go into your eyeballs, right? So you stayed away from it. So that's what we do. We cause no one to stumble in anything in order that no fault may be found in our ministry. We just focus on the Lord. We do what the Lord calls us to do. And if everybody else wants to go to hell, that's on them. That's their choice. On the contrary, in everything we commend ourselves as ministers to God through much endurance, affliction, hardship, constraints, beatings, imprisonments, riots. Paul is like, this is hard. It's not fair. Now, when we say, I'm trying to do the right thing, why isn't it going more easily? When we say, I'm trying to avoid doing wrong, where's my lollipop, right? You've done well, here's a treat. What we're doing is we're engendering a sense of entitlement in ourselves. Now, when we grow up, as all of us, I think, have in this nation, certainly I've been a beneficiary of my own parents' hard work, but I think all of you have been of your own parents and your own hard work. We get a sense of entitlement. This is mine. This is what I expect. This is the comfort level. This is the infrastructure level. This is the entertainment level. This is the luxury level that my life needs to take. And if it doesn't, someone is oppressing me. Okay, well, that might be true. But where do you go from there? Do you say, well, I'm going to get back at them? I'm going to try to regain what I've lost? Or do you say, this is part of living the Christian life? That regardless of what evil others are doing, and even perhaps what evil others are doing to me, I'm going to persist, I'm going to endure in doing what's right. Don't grow weary, St. Paul says, and St. Peter, and actually so does St. John. I think they all say this. Don't grow weary in doing what is right. Beatings, afflictions, hardship, imprisonment. It's just not fair. I'm trying to just love people, and they're being mean. Right? I had a recent experience of this myself. I tried very hard to spend a lot of time trying to love someone, doing the hard work that obviously priests before me hadn't done. And she wrote an angry letter to the bishop about it. And the bishop called me and he's like, this is the complaint I got. I said, that's not fair. I worked my butt off for her. Did all this stuff. Yeah, she wasn't happy with a lot of what I was saying, but it was absolutely true, and she needed to hear it so that she could move on in a positive way with her life and get out of this stuck mess. It wasn't fair. It hurt my feelings. It frustrated me. And I kind of had to make a decision. This is certainly not the first time I've had letters written to me about the bishop. Probably won't be the last. I had to make a decision. Am I gonna turn into the pathetic, insipid, milquetoast priests that have afflicted our church for so many years, or am I going to try to remain faithful in preaching the fullness of the gospel and not just what people want to hear? Now, I'm not perfect at that, but that's my goal. And I had to say, you know what? Regardless of what hardships come, if I get passed over, or if I get fired, or whatever may come, I get criticized, or I get put on some blacklist, or whatever. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I do this. I'm accountable to the Lord. Right? And this is kind of what Paul's trying to get around to here. We're accountable to the Lord. Each one of us has a mission in our life. Some of us may have failed that utterly. at this point in our lives, but to say that the majority of it has been a washout doesn't mean there's not work left to do, right? That there's not a new mission, that there's not a new person who requires your mercy, and you need to find out who they are and go and apply that mercy. That there's a lifestyle of prayer and of meditation, perhaps of penance, that is out there for you to enter into, right? You're retired now, say, and you have all this time, let's say, and you've got this disposable income, let's say, fixed maybe, but disposable nevertheless. Are you going to just squander it on rest and recreation, or are you going to put it to the use of the Lord in exercises of mercy? Are you going to maybe die poor because you've given everything to the Lord? Are you going to take the time that you think is yours in your retirement and apply it to generous volunteering in exercises of mercy? Right? Coming here regularly to the parish to pray. You do. I mean, you guys do that already. I'm not saying, in any of these suggestions, I'm not suggesting that y'all aren't doing anything, but just these are other ideas to consider, right? But that we each have this mission at every stage in our lives. This is why St. Paul says, today is the day of salvation. In an acceptable time I've heard you, and on a day of salvation I have helped you. Behold, now is a very acceptable time. Behold, today is the day of salvation. God only lives in the present. There is no past or future for God. Every moment is God's present, eternal present, which means every moment of every day is the day that God sees you. It's the day that God gives you grace. It's the day that God provides for you. It's the day God commissions you, and it's the day that we respond to the Lord. Right? This is the day of salvation. Right now, actually today, this is it. Like if you only had today left, what would you do as a Christian to show Jesus you loved him? Now, some people here have the luxury of being able to say, I do exactly what I would normally do because I'm normally generous and merciful and forgiving and kind and generous with my time and my wealth. But I know my day would look different. My day would look different today if I was really convinced today was my last day, and that shouldn't be the case, right? We have to really be honest with ourselves. It shouldn't be that if I knew today was my last day, I'd do something differently. What it should be is, regardless of whether or not today was my last day, or whether or not I had 50 more years, today would look exactly the same, because I'm going to do the right thing today. I'm going to hear God's voice, I'm going to respond to it, I'm going to go and do it as best I can, and then I'm going to commend the rest of it to him, right? If it requires me to crack into my savings account to help somebody today, man, I need to do that. If it requires me to change my plans and cancel something to go and do something better and more needful, okay, I need to do that. If it means I give up, I miss lunch today because somebody requires something of me, if I knew I was going to go see Jesus tomorrow, I wouldn't care about the 3 meals that I have today. Like I could make it through today without eating, right? I wouldn't care about my savings account because I'm going to go see Jesus tomorrow, right? This is kind of the mentality that we as Christians have to have. He says, where is it? Jesus tells us, should anyone oppress you, right, press you into service, go 1 mile. This is Paul saying, okay, life's not fair. But give to those who ask you, and do not turn your back on those who want to borrow. And even in borrowing, as Christians, we're kind of in a difficult situation as people who have things borrowed from them, because we're not permitted to ask for it back. Do you guys know that? I don't see any movement. Am I just monotone and I'm drowning everybody out? Are you guys falling asleep? Okay. So, as Christians, we're not allowed to ask for anything back. Jesus says that explicitly. When you lend, if somebody's going to give it back to you, that's wonderful, right? But when you lend, you can't ask for it back. Which means this is really tricky here when Jesus says, give to the one who asks of you, And do not turn your back on the one who wants to borrow, right? Hey man, can I borrow $20 for lunch? I forgot my wallet today. You know, I've had that asked of me recently. And I know somebody who regularly, forgets his wallet when we go out to meals. And you know what? As a Christian, every chance we get to give to somebody in a way that they either can't, and I'm done joking about that. I'm not talking about this anymore, or about him. I don't want this to get worse than you think. Oh my gosh, he's a real jerk. He's not. This is where it ends. The end of joke. When we get to give, to people, in a way that's difficult for us, even if we're not going to get it back, that's the great opportunity, right, of a Christian, because that's ultimately that's the truest thing of what Jesus does. He gives something to us that we can't ever give back to him. He gave us divine life. He sacrifices divine life for us. We can't repay that. And he knew that we couldn't repay that. I'm sure any of you who have had children know what it feels like to give, knowing that what you're giving is not only cannot be repaid, but probably can't even be appreciated by the person you give it to. Christians are called to do that, not just with our children, but with everyone that we call brother, everyone we call sister, every member of the household of God. Here I'm talking specifically about Christians. We don't have to give so generously to pagans, believe it or not. When we can, we do. We always give generously, but we give first to our brethren, those who we call members of the household of God, right? So we give first to our families, then we give to our neighbor, specifically if a member of the Christian household is in need, right? If you have we'll just say a member of this parish who's in need, you can walk over somebody in the street to go and give them assistance. But once you give them that assistance, you walk back to that one who is in the street and you give them whatever you have left, right? Now, all this sounds hard. It all sounds very radical. But it only sounds that way because we've built this structure of expectation and entitlement in our life. You expect to die with what you've got. You expect to die in your bed. You expect to die in your home. You expect to die with friends and family around you, God willing. You expect to die with full bellies. What if you died with nothing? What if your life took a turn where you gave everything away and you relied on God's providence for the remainder of your days? What if you halved your household in order to give it in some meaningful way, not recklessly, but in some meaningful way to those who have need of it, whether it's the church proper or whether it's somebody you know is about to lose their house? Right, this is the kind of mindset that we have to have as Christians. To get out of the expectation that I'm an American, and so this is the way I live my life, and I happen to be a Christian. I'm an American that has a name tag Christian sort of strung around my finger, rather than saying I'm a Christian that happens to live in America. Right? We could be Christians that live in Congo. We could be Christians that live in China. We could be Christians that live in Peru. We could be Christians that live in Australia. And our culture, our expectations, all that would be different. But what would be important is still there, that we're Christians. Right? So don't let Americanism, don't let your American expectation, which leads to entitlement, get in the way of living a Christian life. Don't let the world isn't fair, so I'm going to be unfair back to it, get in the way of being a generous Christian. Right? Don't let the expectation of time, this is my time, I did my time already, now's my time, get in the way of being a generous Christian. When we live a Christian life, as St. Paul says, we'll be the poorest of men, but we will be the wealthiest. We will have the least to give, and yet we will give the most to everyone around us. And in so doing, we will gain in our gift of self, Jesus' own gift of self to us. In pouring out ourselves to others, Jesus will pour himself into us. And as we empty ourselves of ourselves, we will be filled with him. And we will then live forever in glory, in splendor, in wealth, as kings and queens of the eternal kingdom of heaven.